Like everywhere else around the world, SIDS, small island developing states of the southwestern region of the Indian Ocean, are vulnerable not only on the economic but also on the environmental level. This insularity, their proneness to natural catastrophes, their limited institutional structures, their lack of diversification and openings, and the low accessibility to foreign capital are some of the many challenges they have to face. In January 2005, 129 countries and territories gathered in Mauritius under the aegis of the United Nations and adopted a development strategy for the sustainable development of small island states. This strategy, known as the Mauritius Strategy, which spreads between 2005 to 2015, has been elaborated to handle and find solutions to the specific problems that the SIDS have to face. The strategy applies to different fields of activity in areas such as the economy and the environment, as well as the social aspect, through 20 thematic chapters, and recognises the need to reinforce the ability of the island states to implement sustainable development policies. All that was then left to do was to bring these themes to life. This is why the Islands Project was born. The project, funded by the European Union and executed by the IOC, the Indian Ocean Commission, with the technical assistance of the MWH, regroups the islands of Comoros, Reunion, Madagascar, Mauritius, Seychelles and Zanzibar. Its objective is to enable these countries to transform the Mauritius strategy into concrete actions. 4 outcomes are expected. Firstly, the implementation of a follow-up and evaluation system of the Mauritius strategy on a national, regional and international level. Secondly, the application of 4 key themes focusing on the reinforcement of a regional coral reefs facility, the application of protective financial structures to protect against natural and climatic catastrophes, the ability to support national political development strategies, and the operation of a climate change initiative in the Western Indian Ocean. Thirdly, the development and the reinforcement of the capacity of the beneficiaries' countries to take advantage of investments and other initiatives concerning national and regional programmes. And finally, the strengthening of partnerships and the increase of foreign investments, as well as the support of other programmes for the implementation of the Mauritius strategy throughout the SIDS. Between the 24th and the 27th of January 2012, some 60 regional and international actors participating in the Islands Project met for the first time in Mauritius at La Plantation Hotel. They undertook a technical workshop, which was followed by a meeting of the steering committee, whose task was to find a common course of action that will enable the launching of concrete actions in the represented countries and the sharing of best practices. Before the beginning of the first session, Mrs. Cécile Tassin-Pelser, the head of regional cooperation for the European Union Delegation in Mauritius, took some time to tell us more about the reasons that motivated the funding of the Islands Project.
Cette intervention est vraiment complémentaire avec nos autres interventions dans la région. Ce qui est intéressant, c'est que c'est un projet qui est vraiment multisectoriel. Mais qui en même temps a décidé de cibler seulement certains domaines qui sont particulièrement complémentaires avec nos autres interventions en matière de changement climatique, d'énergie renouvelable, de biodiversité. Donc le tout forme un ensemble cohérent. Et nous étions évidemment très motivés, nous sommes toujours très motivés, très intéressés pour intervenir avec la Commission de l'océan Indien dans ce projet.
The workshop was then officially launched in the company of the Secretary General of the Indian Ocean Commission, Mr. Calixa Dauphin, Mrs. Cécile Tassin-Pelser and Mr. Raj Mohabir, officer in charge at the IOC. Everyone underlined the importance of the project, its complementarity with other initiatives, as well as its regional dimension. They also encouraged those present to implement as rapidly as possible the strategies that were going to be validated during the week. This first meeting was also dedicated to the presentation of the new visual identity of the Islands project. After the opening ceremony, key speakers spoke about the sustainable development of SIDS and shared their expertise on the themes that have to be addressed by islands. They presented to the audience examples of concrete actions on the subject, set about in different regions of the globe. Mr. Kennedy Faufalo, Inter-Regional Advisor at the United Nations Department for Economic and Social Affairs, UNDESA, proposed a United Nations model that enables the SIDS to measure their degree of vulnerability, essential for their sustainable development. We then asked him to elaborate on the key activities that the UNDESA will put in action during the coming months in this field.
We in the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, we will be implementing the first key results area for the program. We will be focusing this work primarily in the beginning through this project for the Indian Ocean Commission, but it's a very valuable contribution to the rest of small island developing states globally as well.
Mr. Jean-Pascal Quod, consultant on the Islands project, an expert in the management of the marine coast environment, then shared his expertise and underlined the importance of a regional vision for coral reefs management on a long-term basis. Here are his views on the importance to undertake tangible actions in the region.
Alors, des actions concertées sont nécessaires au niveau régional parce que le récif corallien est un bien partagé entre toutes les îles. Nous partageons tous les poissons, les coraux, et donc nous devons nous préoccuper de préserver cette ressource à l'échelon 2020-2030. Et dans le cadre du projet régional, la priorité aujourd'hui, c'est de se focaliser sur la gouvernance, en particulier des acteurs autour du récif, c'est-à-dire de recréer un groupe de travail à travers la facilité, une Coral Reef Task Force qui va être placée sous la Convention de Nairobi, et de mettre en place un observatoire des récifs coralliens qui va permettre de réunir les acteurs du monde scientifique, mais surtout les acteurs du monde non scientifique, pour qu'ils soient partie prenante de la surveillance des récifs coralliens.
Professor Lino Brigoglio, Director of the Islands and Small States Institute at the University of Malta, presented to the audience the result of years of research on characteristics and criteria of economic vulnerability of small states, as well as the resilience factors that he deems necessary to develop. Here is a resume of his point of view on the importance of being able to measure the degree of vulnerability and economic resilience of the island states.
Our study relates to economic vulnerability, and it measures the extent to which small islands are exposed to external shocks, and also to economic resilience, which is a policy package. So vulnerability increases the risk of being affected by shocks, and resilience reduces the risk. So it's a very important study for small islands like Mauritius.
Andrea Bassi, Islands consultant and ex-director of the Millennium Institute, developed on the characteristics of the tools for dynamic modelling. These tools enable the technicians and decision-makers to model and thus anticipate the effects and impacts of political decisions and strategies. He tells us more on their practical use.
There are a number of factors that should be considered. Well, one is that they allow decision-makers to actually use all the knowledge available in one single framework to make informed decisions. So they don't have to rely on different assumptions, different models, different opinions to make decisions. They can actually combine all this knowledge in one framework to inform what may come next, the definition of a strategy basically. A second advantage is also that by integrating all the knowledge in one framework, they will be able to test their own opinions.
Mrs. Constance Vigilance, Economic Advisor for Small States, Environment and Economic Management Department of the Commonwealth Secretariat, underlined the importance of training and the reinforcement of the capacities to ensure the autonomy of island states related to sustainable development. Here is, according to her, the main themes to be covered by the training programmes.
The themes that are most relevant for the region in terms of training should be the international architecture for environment and sustainable development in terms of the Convention on Biodiversity and climate change, for example, as well as training on the economic policy issues that are relevant to sustainable development. This can be done through actual country workshops, as well as online training, as well as officials from the region, the various countries within the region, visiting the Pacific or the Caribbean to learn from their experiences, to learn from their processes and their best practices.
Mr. Christophe Rouelina, economist on the Islands Project, introduced a practical case through the presentation of the work undertaken in the Caribbean region. Since 2005, countries from this region have indeed organised themselves to structure their national and their common regional vision in terms of sustainable development. Here are his views on the importance of having these countries as partners.
Le projet Islands s'est proposé de s'associer avec les projets similaires des États caraïbes pour 3 raisons. Leur capacité à s'organiser, à lever des fonds dans des montants relativement importants et surtout puisqu'ils seront notre contrepartie en tant que SILS des Caraïbes et également de la Jamaïque littoral.
The second day of this technical workshop was an opportunity for all participants to meet in focus groups, to review and develop work plans, to discuss the proposals prepared by the chairmanships in recent months in their respective countries, and to endorse the activities of the logical framework. These work groups were structured around the 4 project outcomes of the Islands Project. The participants then went into plenary sessions to share the results of their work. On the third day, the participants had the pleasure of sharing a moment with the dolphins. To do so, they had to go to Tamarin, located on the west coast of Mauritius. By its geographical configuration, the Bay of Tamarin is a meeting point for the dolphins, who gather there every morning to spend a few hours to rest and socialise. Adèle Kadinouche, Scientific Director at CBIOM and former Project Manager at the MMCS, accompanied the group and shared her expertise in this area during the trip.
Alors en fait, la baie de Tamarin, c'est la chambre à coucher des dauphins. Ils viennent là pour dormir, pour se reposer. Et pour cela, ils ont besoin de caractéristiques très précises. Ils ont besoin d'un endroit abrité, spécialement abrité, qui va les mettre à l'abri des prédateurs, qui sont par exemple les requins. Et la baie de Tamarin correspond à tous ces critères. Donc en gros, les dauphins n'ont pas le choix. Il n'y a qu'ici qu'ils peuvent dormir tranquillement et en profiter pour socialiser.
In recent years, many tour operators have been organising boat cruises for tourists so as to bring them to these spots and offer them to swim with the dolphins. This moment of relaxation was first and foremost the occasion to raise the awareness of the participants of this workshop to the importance of an increased vigilance concerning this tourist activity.
Alors aujourd'hui, l'idée c'est de faire participer les invités à la collecte de données scientifiques sur les dauphins. Donc là, concrètement, il va y avoir un groupe qui va prendre des photos, des dorsales qui vont être utiles pour l'étude des populations, pour l'identification. Un groupe qui va relever les données qu'on appelle sighting, c'est-à-dire simplement le point GPS, le nombre d'individus dans le groupe de dauphins, le nombre de petits. Et un autre groupe qui va avec moi suivre le comportement des animaux. Et puis, il me faut aussi quelques personnes pour chronométrer les apnées des dauphins et pour compter aussi les bateaux qui sont autour des dauphins afin de contribuer au monitoring du dolphin watching.
The impact of this activity on the behaviour of marine mammals are not negligible and have brought experts in the field, including the MMCS, the Mauritius Marine Conservation Society, to address the issue and set up awareness and training programmes for the operators to help them preserve the serenity of the dolphins.
Alors la MMCS, c'est la Mauritius Marine Conservation Society. C'est une organisation non gouvernementale mauricienne. Et cette organisation existe depuis 30 ans maintenant et œuvre pour la protection de l'environnement marin à travers des actions de sensibilisation, d'éducation, du lobbying auprès du gouvernement aussi également et met en œuvre, donc depuis son existence, a mis en œuvre plusieurs projets. Donc notamment un projet de sensibilisation pour les opérateurs du dolphin watching, pour une gestion durable du dolphin watching. Donc ça, c'était un projet financé par le GFSGP de l'UNDP qui a ensuite abouti à un projet plus scientifique sur l'étude des dauphins dont on parle aujourd'hui. Donc c'était un projet financé par la Fondation Total. Et enfin, un projet financé par Progeco de la COI qui portait sur une étude de faisabilité pour une aire marine protégée dans la région. Donc aujourd'hui, toutes les informations que j'utilise pour faire comprendre cette problématique du dolphin watching sont tirées du projet de la MMCS de gestion durable des ressources marines de la région.
To ensure the economic interests of the tourism industry and the preservation of marine resources is part of the challenge of sustainable development that Islands seeks to address.
Alors, cette étude scientifique m'a permis d'avoir une meilleure connaissance de dauphins. Avant, je ne savais pas que ces dauphins dorment pendant la journée et c'est un endroit merveilleux pour qu'ils puissent venir reposer. Alors, je pense que cette étude scientifique est importante pour la conservation ici à l'île Maurice, parce que moi, je viens des Seychelles, on n'a pas une telle chose pareille.
Oui, j'ai appris beaucoup sur la vie des dauphins. Leur cycle durant une nuit, ils sont d'abord en mer durant la nuit pour chasser. Ensuite, ils viennent dans ce coin pour dormir et socialiser.
I never had a trip like this. Of course, in Zanzibar we have a dolphin, but I never had a trip.
Yeah, in Zanzibar, dolphin watching is regulated, and there is understanding between local fishermen, the local NGO, and tour operators to regulate the watching, and therefore the enforcement is a bit better.
To conclude the day, participants attended the launch of the book Saving Small Island Developing States with two of its co-authors, Jong Lane Roberts and Shyam Nat. The official presentation was followed by a panel discussion with the audience made up of representatives from NGOs, academia and research, government agencies, private sector and the media. John Lang and Raj Mohabir agreed to share with us their impressions at the end of this meeting.
The book Saving SIDS, which is a book about economic growth and natural resources, was first conceived as a textbook for students on a master's course in public policy. We then felt that it should have a wider audience, and so we approached the Commonwealth Secretariat, and they agreed to publish it, and it is now available across the whole world, all the Commonwealth countries and beyond. And so we feel we really have achieved the original objective of making it available for students who are the future policy makers and policy advisors, not only in Mauritius, but also worldwide.
Moi, je suis très content qu'il y a eu une très bonne participation. Je ne m'attendais pas à une centaine de personnes aujourd'hui. Les débats étaient très intenses et il y a eu beaucoup de bonnes propositions qui ont été faites que nous, on va essayer de l'intégrer dans le cadre du programme Islands. Et je souhaite vraiment que cette mobilisation qu'on a débutée aujourd'hui à travers ce genre de forum de débat soit une activité qui soit continuée et dans ce pays-là et dans les autres îles de la région.
The last day of the meeting was held in restricted assembly for the steering committee. 20 representatives of the IOC member states worked on the results of the technical workshop and discussed issues relating to the smooth running of the project. They then discussed on questions such as the follow-up and the evaluation modalities, validated activities required for the awareness and communication campaigns on sustainable development, discussed its financial aspects, and detailed the activities of the programmes that have to be conducted as rapidly as possible. After 4 days of intense reflection and sharing, Islands can finally be launched effectively. Before going back to their respective countries, the representatives of the states involved in the project shared their feelings on the outcome of this week and spoke about the actions they have to set about to make sure that the Islands project is a success.
Les 4 thèmes définis ici vont permettre à Madagascar de mettre en œuvre les activités dont on a besoin, concernant surtout les récifs coralliens, le développement durable, le changement climatique et également les activités de sensibilisation et de communication dans ce sens.
Donc il y a des actions que le consultant nous a présentées ce matin. Et pour commencer, c'est-à-dire faire une sensibilisation de la population concernant le projet pied. Et aussi, on va donner aux écoles et puis on va faire aussi des formations concernant les activités de ce projet.
The decisions reached today are very much important and critical for our country. We are going to engage on the issues of the coral reef facilities, the climate change, disaster risk reduction, and of course the entire prospect of having a green and sustainable island. And I believe that the goals of the project will fundamentally and eventually be met by us as the people and the community of Zanzibar.
Mrs. Tassin-Pelzer gave us her thoughts on the potential benefits for islands following this week's work.
Cette semaine, on est vraiment entré dans une nouvelle phase. Les pays bénéficiaires du projet maintenant sont vraiment à bord, sont montés dans le train, je dirais. On a défini qui fait quoi, qui va faire quoi. On a défini aussi, on s'est mis d'accord sur les étapes. Le projet est ambitieux. Il faut qu'on obtienne des résultats rapidement. Donc je pense que cette semaine, on a bien clarifié qui doit faire quoi. Maintenant, chacun rentre chez soi avec son travail à faire à la maison. Les pays qui étaient moins bien préparés vont devoir, je dirais, rattraper le train en marche. Car nous allons déjà bientôt penser à préparer la deuxième phase du programme Islands. Et d'ailleurs, nous sommes mis d'accord pour la prochaine fois que nous nous retrouverons. Nous allons déjà étudier les orientations de la deuxième phase. Donc, dans les 6 mois qui viennent, on a tous beaucoup de choses à faire et je pense que c'est vraiment, on entre vraiment probablement dans l'étape la plus cruciale du programme.
The island's technical team will continue to coordinate and lead activities, the main objective being the application of concrete actions and the setting up of a regional community. We leave the last word to Christophe Legrand, team leader of Islands.
Je pense qu'il faut rester conscient qu'on n'a encore rien atteint, on n'a encore aucun résultat. Cependant, en faisant venir et réunissant des experts nationaux de 5 pays de la COI plus Zanzibar, issus de la société civile, les gouvernements ou le monde scientifique, je pense qu'on a déjà réussi à créer une symbiose et une meilleure compréhension commune du projet Islands. Je pense qu'aussi on a pu développer donc, à travers cette compréhension des plans de travail pour les 2 années à venir et ça je crois que c'est déjà quelque chose d'important. Et puis sinon il faut juste que je souhaite bonne chance au reste du projet.